Yeah.
3, 2, 1. Let's do it. We are live. Welcome to
Hello.
What's the Bit podcast.
All right. Guys, it's good to be back. I always ask this. Like, I'm surprised at whatever episode we've made it to. What episode is this now?
Number 6.
6. Holy shit. That's
3 weeks in. Sorry, 6 weeks in.
6 weeks. Man, how long are we planning to do this for?
Forever.
Ever.
All right. Perfect. I love it. I love it. I love this idea. Let's just never, ever stop.
No, but we're going to talk about honesty today. And that seems a layered topic, so I'm interested.
Hell yeah. So, honesty. Like, that's basically where, like, you say things that everyone wants to hear, right? That's
what honesty is? Saying what saying what someone wants to hear?
Maybe it's not. Maybe it is. I don't know, guys. Like, how are you guys going to define it? What is it? What is honesty to you guys?
I guess it depends on the discussion. You know, what the topic of the discussion is. You know, if someone's asking you how you feel about something, are you going to be honesty would be, is that really how you feel? Or are you?
So honesty has like essentially like different definitions depending upon context for you. Is what I'm picking up from you here, Jordan.
I mean, at least that's a starting point for this podcast for me.
Right.
We'll explore that.
How about you, Alex? Like, how are you going to define honesty?
Honesty is the truth in which you present yourself for me. So honesty is being true to yourself first. Because other people's perception may not be true to what you think. So your honesty may not be someone else's honesty.
Okay. I feel like you just did something to my brain and it broke, and now I don't know what to do next. Like,
see, to me that depends on the conversation, because there's reality and there's honesty. I mean, reality, like,
so that's a cool idea there, Jordan. Sort of cut you off right in the middle of your sentence.
Cut me off.
Not even let you get to like the halfway point of that phrase. Is that aspect of like there's honesty and then there's reality, that they're different.
Correct.
They're certainly different words.
They're different words. They are definitely spelled differently.
And that's the honest truth. They are different.
Like they are not spelled the same at all. Like there's an H in one of them.
Right. So your reality and honesty are two different things, but they connect.
Like, do they have to be? Like,
your
reality and your honesty be the same? I don't know.
They don't have to be. You could absolutely be lying. I mean, your could be whatever you make it. You know, like that's kind of, there are people out there who speak their truth because they've been fed that information and they haven't checked or questioned said authority of information. So they're out there spewing what they think to be honesty, but is just misinformation.
So what I'm getting from you, Alex, is that, well, when it comes to the topic of honesty, you're jumping right into honesty begins with self-awareness.
It's the origin.
And then speaking truthfully about who you are and what you're about. And then, you know, how it extends from there.
Because if you don't have that foundation, then your honesty isn't a truth. It's just a hypothetical.
Well, I mean, I think that people can be honest without self-awareness. I feel that like the value of it is probably debatably less for me personally. Mm-hmm. I think a lot about honesty. When it comes to honesty for me, I definitely believe that it is the truth of whatever the situation is, and in any situation that you're in, like you're a part of it. So I do also believe that like honesty starts with self-awareness and your part in whatever situation you're in. But I think it also is more than that. I think that how we're honest and what we're willing to say, and that sort of thing, it'll really link back to what our perceptions are as a child, what morals we were taught, how flexible we can be on particular details. And realistically, I think what it really comes down to for me is this idea that we will often, or I will often, find myself trying to think of myself in a particular term, like I'm a good guy, or maybe I'm not a good guy. Maybe I'm honest. Maybe I'm an asshole. Maybe I'm funny. Maybe I'm not. But I have these notions in my mind of what I'm supposed to be, and I will try and fit my perceptions or the details that are coming in into the box that like I was taught that I was supposed to have, or the thing that like, these perceptions that I formed in my youth, in my formative years about like, like what is it I want to be? And then now all of these things have to fit in one of these categories. And then I can speak about them. But realistically, the deconstruction of, your morals and these labels that we put on ourselves is, for me, part of becoming more honest, because instead of data comes in, experience, details, my interactions with others, my feelings in those moments, when it comes in, instead of me trying to fit it into a box like that person's good or bad, or I'm good or bad, or like I'm right or wrong, instead of trying to like assign labels to the information that's coming in, I'm just accepting it for what it is and trying to be honest in the moment about what the actual stuff that's coming in and how I'm processing it, without trying to put too many like pigeonholed labels, like good or bad. Like I think that good or bad is, I think the idea of right and wrong, good or bad, is the enemy of true honesty.
I think I understand what you're saying, and and I think I'm vibing with it. Why did I say vibing? Ugh.
Why'd you say you think you're vibing with it too? You either are or you aren't.
Because I started thinking that honesty and truth are different. Because in some ways, what I feel like what you are talking about is truth. This idea of truth. So, because you're talking about morals and right, wrong, like so. Is something true or not true? Is there a one or the other? Where honesty and truth in some ways are not the same, because I don't know that honesty is dealing in absolutes, in like one is right and one is wrong. I think honesty is where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
It's being and I also, the word vulnerable came into my head too. Like,
yes.
How is honesty and vulnerability connected? and that's because I think you can be honest, and I don't want to say the word wrong, because that's kind of where, but you can be honest and
be honest and maybe not making your best, not putting your best forward.
Right.
It's honesty and could be bad, though. I think is kind of like, just because you're honest doesn't mean you should say it. You know what I mean? Like, even if it's true, doesn't mean it's something you should about, because it could hurt someone's feelings, and that may not be intention. And that's sort of like criticism being honest, but not coming off with the right vibe.
Well, I mean, there's a difference between honesty and combative communication as well. Like, I think that when we start talking about this, we're talking on a very high level about like, conceptual details and this sort of thing. But like, I think we're really only going to get our hands around it when we start talking about specific instances. like things that are in our real life and like, you know, how we relate to it. Because I think it's easier to explain an instance and say, I felt like I was really honest in this moment, and kind of dissect those particular things. Because like I do think that when it comes to honesty, that the people that we are most dishonest with are usually those that are closest with us. So like ourselves, our significant others, and honestly, the people that we are afraid to lose. Because you know, sometimes when you are honest, you are going to present details that is you're speaking your truth, right? You know, like you're sharing from the heart, and maybe it's not what everybody wants to hear, and that's a gamble, right?
Right. Yeah. Not everyone is ready for anyone else's particular honesty.
That's true.
I resonate with the being honest fear that people will leave, you know, and I think back to a moment where you got really upset in a conversation, and I was worried that like someone would be affected by that, and it wasn't the case. It was definitely, there was grace involved, that they understood where you were coming from and loved you anyway. Like still, that wasn't who you were. It was just a response that you had, and it wasn't enough for them to push you away. And if it was, is that really someone that you need in your life, that you're constantly worried that you're going to say that one thing and they're going to walk away?
Well, maybe, right? Like, I mean, honestly, I think the answer there is maybe. Like, I think we want to answer the question. No, we don't need those people. But in some cases, the answer is maybe, because we do obviously make concessions. We obviously aren't honest all the time. I think one of the like, as children, we play a game, right? Truth or dare, something like that. And it's like
as children, as children, you say as children, maybe adult
or
babies.
As adults. Exactly. But like we play this game.
I've never heard of it. How do you play?
What's it called?
See, what it is you just always say dare, so you never actually have to tell any details about who you really are. That's how you play that game. That's the strategy to win. It's also the most entertaining way to play the game. But I think with this, with that particular, like let's take that. Like, we're supposed to present the truth. But do we really? Maybe sometimes we do. Maybe sometimes we don't. Maybe sometimes it's something in between. Like, for instance, like,
isn't it always in between?
I think one of my favorite questions in Truth or Dare is, tell me about a time when you were most, and then fill in the blank. And like whoever answers, you're probably not actually getting the full-on truth, especially if the end of the question is, tell me about the time you were most ashamed. Or, yeah, most ashamed. Like, because answering that question is very hard. Like, for instance, like I can be honest about that one, and it's tough, and it's going to cost me. It's going to cost me something to be honest about it. All right. So I'm glad you had headphones on, because here it comes. So, like, for me to be the most honest, what's the thing that I'm most ashamed of? The thing I'm most ashamed of is I have this idea that, like, my childhood best friend, not childhood, teen, it's my friend who I grew up with in high school. When he was 19, the facts say he fell off of a radio tower and he died when he was 19. But we don't really know if he fell or if he jumped. And when I think about it, I'm like, and I ask myself truthfully, what do I think happened? Do I think he fell? I don't know. But there is a part of me that thinks he jumped. And there's a part of me that thinks he jumped because I was not a good friend. Because there's a part of me that thinks that like that he was closeted, that he's homosexual, and that I had a hand in closeting him. I hate that part of myself. I hate that the young man that I was so homophobic that we drove down the road and screamed obscenities out of the window of the car. I hate that. That is what I am most ashamed of. And that's a hard question to come up and be really, really truthfully honest about that in the moment. Because I think a lot of people, they won't go there. But like, why don't we? Why don't we go there? Because like what just happened? What just happened in this podcast and in the chat when I went there? Changed the whole energy.
No, but it's something you'll never be able to have a resolution for, because you have no idea what he went through before you or after you. So it's not fair to yourself to not forgive yourself for that, because you don't know that you were the only proponent in that, and you also don't know if he actually slipped or jumped. So your honesty is just whatever you've made it, whatever your brain fills in the blanks.
So let me touch on something real quick, because you're talking about the energy in the room right now, and I can tell you exactly what the energy was in me. The energy was trying to take a temperature check of whether or not where to take the conversation. Shall we is this something that, because you shared something very honest and vulnerable, is it something where we need to kind of talk about that? Do we need to dive into your experience, or are we going to continue down this road of, okay, how does that apply to the topic we're talking about, and kind of move on? So it wasn't like this energy of like, oh, you just let the air out of the room. It was okay, I'm hearing what's going on, and I want to understand where we should take this. What does Tyson need right now? Is kind of this thing that or does he have a plan of where to go with this? And I think that's the risk when you are honest and you are vulnerable, is that and when I say temperature check, I think that's kind of a piece of it, a piece of honesty. Anyways, there's when you decide, I'm going to be completely honest in this moment, you are there needs to be, everyone should recognize that there needs to be some sort of a mutual respect there, right? Because you need to understand, are people ready? Is this really the environment where I'm okay and safe doing this?
Mm-hmm.
And they need to also have that same respect back. I mean, if you just walk into a bar and start and tell someone this story, they are going to be so off their heels, and they might be the most compassionate people in the world, but you just threw them off. They weren't ready. They don't know you, maybe, and so there is an energy there, but that's part of this temperature. So I know that I didn't lose energy. I just started trying to think what is needed right now in this moment, because this is a safe place where you can do that. At least, I mean, I don't know about the world because we're public, but at least in the between the three of us, it's a safe place, and we're just having that conversation. We just happen to be having that conversation publicly.
Well, that's just it, though. I think that like when we get into details of honesty, that honesty is actually in the details. Like, I think that when we gloss over details, when we speak in platitudes, when we just want to tie everything up in a nice, neat little bow, like, I don't think we're being truly honest, because I don't think that life is all that often just one little neat thing. I think that life is kind of a mess. And because the fact of the matter is like in that story, like, I don't know. And I will never know. But the shame is still the fact that, like, I was being homophobic and I was saying and doing terrible things that I was taught to do, things that, like, I needed to be corrected on. And, like, I'm ashamed of that person I was. Because the fact of the matter is that, like, as I was growing up, like, we all do this. We get these ideas, like, we go through experiences, and we are trying to, like, put wisdom onto these things. Like, well, I got an A on my homework, and you know, like, I got some acceptance from my parents, so I'm just going to keep doing that because that's good. And now I'm going to apply the label to myself that, like, I'm an A student. And we do this to ourselves because we go through our lives and we have experiences and we're trying to find the things that work out well for us.
That's the second time you've mentioned labels too.
Yeah. And we apply these labels and then we try to be them. And when we start trying to be the labels, because it's the thing that doesn't lead us to pain, it leads us to, you know, like, good feelings, theoretically. That's when I think that we start becoming a little bit more phony. Like, you know, like, I think about The Catcher in the Rye, right? Like Holden Caulfield is always, he's obsessed with phoniness, and, like, he himself is phony. That's why he has a nervous breakdown in that book. Spoiler warning for those of you.
Yeah, I didn't know there was going to be a quiz. I'm sorry.
But like, he says that he wants to be a catcher in the rye because he thinks about these kids who are running around in a rye field and they're, like, next to this cliff, and if you fall off the cliff, that they become phony because they become adults. And I think what he's really getting at there is that when you're a child, eventually at some point in time, you start assigning these labels to yourself about what it is you are, because that's what's going to lead you to more good feelings or more acceptance, more love, that sort of thing, or at least less pain. You know, you're definitely not going to be the thing that you got yelled at about or that you got beat up about. You don't want to be that. So right. You start trying to fit into these labels, and that's when you start becoming less and less honest.
That's a great point. Yeah. And I mean, you already know that I hate labels, right? So, like, but, like, you're right. And that is one of the side effects of having a labeling system, is that then people kind of see, oh, well, that looks like a better label. And so I'm going to try to be that. And that's not really who you are. Yeah. Is that kind of what you're getting at there too?
I think in some ways, yes, but in some ways, like, I know that I have labels that I use a lot because it's easier for me to communicate, to use labels, because that's what we do. So I use them. But so, for instance, I have ADHD, but I am not just ADHD. Thank you, Alex. But, like, let's just chase this. You know, just because I have ADHD doesn't mean I am ADHD. And while I have ADHD tendencies,
I'm out of water. So we're good.
Okay, all right. But, like, that's not exactly who I am. And while I talk about it and I use it as a reason behind why I do things, it's not meant to be an excuse.
Right. And you've talked about that. That label doesn't excuse you from your actions.
Exactly. And it's happened recently. Like, I got hyper focused on something earlier this week and I couldn't let it go. And I ended up, like, just doing and saying things I wish I wouldn't have. And, like, I could feel it while it was happening, but it just got away from me.
I feel like that happens in text a lot, though, because it's harder to kind of make yourself accountable in that moment. You're just like, clickety, clackety, clickety, clackety, clickety, clackety, send.
Does honesty play into that, Tyson? Like, are in those moments, are you basically saying, you shouldn't, but you're just like, I want to still express my honesty?
So yeah, there is something about that, because like I also think of myself as an honest person. So if I'm really truly honest, then I really need to be like communicating what I feel in the moment. But the fact of the matter is I can pick a time to communicate what I feel. I don't have to do it exactly at that moment. Like maybe yes, it's good to do that whenever it's possible. But I mean, the fact of the matter is that you're right. If I walked into a bar and I just started like just truth bombs of heavy details and trauma, I'm like blah blah blah. Guess what? I got tied to a chair when I was a kid, and you're like because I couldn't say the number 13. Like people are like, I don't want to get
You'll
into
probably
that
get some free
detail
drinks
right
for that,
now.
man.
Like yeah, yeah. Or somebody else will be like, oh well, yeah, like get that guy a shot. But like we need to pick and choose our moments with how much other people can handle, right? So honesty begins with being honest with yourself and self-awareness. But it also extends to like I want to be honest with people for as much as they can handle, and I usually go past their boundaries. I know I do. I cruise past it all the time, and then I have to like take a step back. So like consequently, I end up having to have friends who can accept apologies,
right?
Or that they like have some sort of background with getting kind of mixed up from time to time.
Yeah,
because like
What?
I'm gonna upset people because
well, and I've told my wife this multiple times where I've said, man, can't I just express what I'm feeling without being worried about hurting someone's feelings or having it be like this big thing? I just want to be able to say what I am feeling right now without all this stuff. And in some ways, the answer is you can't. Like I can't expect that I can just go run my mouth and whatever my honesty is and expect, look, I'm going to say all this stuff, but your feelings can't get hurt. You can't judge me for it. You can't say anything about it. Just let me do like unless the ground rules are there, unless you have someone where it's like you've already established, look, man, just let it out. It's not going to happen. Like it's not going to hurt me or whatever. But you can't just walk up to someone, even if you think you trust them, and say, and just run your mouth. And I say run my mouth. A lot of times running the mouth is maybe saying things that really aren't honest. And which maybe goes back to, this is how I'm honestly feeling, but it's not what reality is. It's not true.
Sorry, go ahead.
No,
That brings me to something that I've changed in my rhetoric, which is said I think, of the words I think, and changing it to I feel, because it's not necessarily a truth. It's a feeling. So it's not my brain telling me that the analysis is correct. It's my intuition. And it's something that I hadn't done until like a week or two ago, consciously.
But people want their feelings validated too. So like there's kind of that nuance where it's like your feelings may not be true, but they are honest and they are maybe true. Like you are still truly feeling them.
Mm-hmm. You know? And so that's the difference between the two, is that I have to be honest with which part of me is speaking the information. If this is the writing on the wall, I can show it to you as a reference, or this is playing what that means is in my head.
Farrah says everyone needs therapy. I think that's 100% correct.
We're doing it. We're all working on it. There's a collective consciousness who are trying to get therapists around here.
I do think that there's something there that I want to bookend or tangent off of, because I have ADHD. So, sorry, but honestly, when you said like I'm being honest about my feelings right now, I think that part of honesty is also being truthful about the fact that we can feel multiple things all at the same time. We're very rarely just one thing. This idea, like, so for instance, like I can be annoyed with someone and I can say, I really want you to stop doing this thing that is annoying the Christ out of me right now. But I also know that if I take a moment and try to reach out to them and say, how about we try and bond on this, and I can find like the common ground, but if I lead that conversation with, you're annoying the Christ out of me, and I am like, I'm at my last fucking wit's end. And then they're like, how are they supposed to like respond with, okay, I'm going to be vulnerable back with you now because you're coming at it's this thing where like, I can be both of those things at the same time, but one's going to definitely hit harder than the other because yes, I can be annoyed with someone and also want to be like engaged and try to like see things from their point of view. Like that is true for me.
You just have to
Those
start the
things happen at the same
conversation
time.
with no offense or I love you, but, and you can say anything.
Exactly. Yeah, I think we already got to the bit. We got to the bit a half hour early on honesty. It's just like, I love you, but like, I love your butt. I love Alex. I love your butt. Wait, no.
All right, calm down.
It changed. I ran some things down. Okay.
In my household, we have terminology for things that I do. Like this has been given to us. This is through counseling, through therapy. We've learned that it's healthy to do this because I found out that my wife and my kids like think that I'm angry when I'm not, because of how I sound, because I get so passionate about the topic, and they all recoil, and and so we've started calling it sriracha. We've started calling it like, this is Dad putting spice on things, and so we've kind of changed the terminology because that's a part of it, right? It's like I'm being honest, but they take it differently than when I'm communicating, because I'm showing so much passion and I'm starting to raise my voice and I'm starting to say, this is unacceptable. It's like, and I'm saying things, and it's just like, and they're just like, oh, and then I gotta be like, what? And
right, because you don't notice it, right? Like that's just you're being honest with yourself at that moment.
Yeah, I just feel strongly about the topic.
So we're circling back around here again with the aspect of you're enabling them to use a word that bestows upon you like some vulnerability, right? Because they have the secret override button that they can press that brings you back down to their level and be like, hey, sriracha, or like, it's hot.
Right.
It's the safe word, right?
Yeah.
Like when people in my life, like if I'm ADHDing too much.
I knew it was coming.
Yeah.
I didn't get the memo that we're supposed to drink every time you said
I never told anybody.
Yeah, but like it's a thing where they'll use the safe word or a trigger word. Well, it'll be like, you can just say cool your jets turbo, and I'll be like, okay, I'm getting hyper focused. I need to take a moment and step back, or if I'm interrupting too much because I'm really like jazzed on this thing. So because my goal is
and what
to
is
be
it?
vulnerable.
What's the phrase again? What's the phrase?
Cool your jets turbo.
Okay, writing it down.
Yeah, exactly. But like this idea of giving someone the ability to enable your own vulnerability or something like that, or like you want to be vulnerable, but you know that when you're in that moment where you are expressing, that it can be off-putting to someone, and to just have these kind of rules of engagement almost. Like for instance, we do this thing with rebranding. You said like the sriracha thing it's brilliant, and we're touching tact right now. We're interfacing with this idea of tact, of like, how do we tactfully have conversations where we're not going to destroy each other with our honesty. So for instance, I do well when people remind me of stuff, but they don't ever want to seem like they're a nag. So I have to rebrand it as consistent reminders. I thrive with consistent reminders. So I'm just like, you guys can say these things to me to remind me about this, like ad nauseum. And if I ever like seem like I'm getting annoyed by the amount of reminding you're giving me, you get to tell me, remember when you said, but like, that's also where grace comes in, right? Because like, sometimes it's all right for me to just be like, okay, I said it was all right, but I just need to check out for a little bit now. And then they'll be like, okay.
Right.
So I think like what we're all coming, like, wait, what we keep circling around is like, there's honesty and then there's vulnerability, but like we're being driven by pain, right?
Right.
It's the fear of pain. We don't want to cause pain and we don't want to feel pain. And that's what affects our honesty. It affects how honest we'll be with other people, and it affects how honest we'll be with ourselves, because we're afraid of pain.
Yeah, and then that goes back to saying the wrong thing, right? Like that's that you don't want to hurt someone's feelings or give yourself that light that gives them a door to walk through, that says, you don't need me in your life anymore. And so that's that fear.
Mm-hmm.
There's also the added twist of perception, because it's not always about pain. Sometimes what's received from the other person, sometimes someone might accuse you of you're not being honest, but in your mind you were. Like I wasn't afraid of pain. I was being honest. And actually this is so I'll be vulnerable for a second. But like, so my wife and I had an issue once and this caused some issues in our marriage for a while. We're only recently getting over some of it. But it was stuff we both needed to learn. And part of it had to do with alcohol. And I had, she found a bottle of vodka that I had stashed in my closet. Now, I honestly did not I stashed it there, so there was a perception there. So we had to go through this thing where I did have an alcohol problem at the time that was not, it's like I didn't hide it to be dishonest. I hid it because I didn't think she'd understand. I didn't think that she thought that if I had vodka, that meant I was drinking it all the time. It was like this perception of, I didn't feel like I was allowed. I could have a bottle of vodka around and have her not think that it was a problem. So I hid it because I just didn't want her to see it and have those issues. And so then she found it. And so the thing that happened is that it completely tore away some trust. And so she's right. It's completely dishonest, even though it wasn't what I was intending. It was not where my heart was. I wasn't saying I better hide this from her because I don't want her to know. It was more like I don't think she'd understand if she saw it, and there would be more problems that I don't want to deal with. Pain that I don't want to deal with.
So then that's lying through omission then.
There we go.
Because you're hiding it.
Talk about that. What do you mean, Matt?
Even though you're not saying you're not drinking or it's not your bottle, that's not the words you're using. You're hiding the information from her that you do have that bottle. So that's essentially not being honest through omission. And not to say that you weren't being honest, because I don't want to label you that. I'm questioning whether or not it is honest or not through omission.
Well, I came to grips with the idea that I wasn't being honest. In the time, I didn't want to admit that because I didn't think it was true. Because I wanted more. I wanted her to understand more about it. It's not like I was pounding a bottle of vodka every day. I wasn't an alcoholic. Like just like it wasn't what she thought it was. It was that I didn't think she understood that I can have a bottle of vodka without it being a problem. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't share it with her. So I didn't want her to see it, because if she saw it, it would be a problem. And
that was your perception,
right? But it was dishonest. So we've come a long way, just so that everyone knows. Like, spoiler alert, like I can drink in front of my wife now. Like she gets it. There's freedom there. But there was a point when I was over drinking and she knew it, and it was a problem. So she had that. She was correct. I mean, it's just that she wasn't correct about the thing. And now there's freedom. Now we can talk. Now she knows exactly. So at the end of the day, all of a sudden I had to come to grips with honesty. I needed to make sure that she knew if I had been drinking that day, she knew how much I wasn't hiding it. But at the same time, she didn't want to be a nag. So like there's this dynamic we had to work through in counseling, because I didn't want to be like every day, how many beers did you have today? 3 beers and 2 shots. Like, and then her started evaluating, sounds like too much, Jordan.
Exactly. I think that this is the interesting thing, right? Like when we talk about honesty and dishonesty, like the primary fuel is fear, right? We're afraid of the pain, or we're afraid of the label, or we're afraid of the something, or we're afraid of the other person's fear, right? Because like you were really afraid of you over drinking, because like you knew I'm not gonna go back down that path. I can have this bottle of booze here. It's not a big deal, because I face that demon, and if that demon comes back up again, I'll go back to therapy or whatever I'm gonna do to like address it. But like I can have this, like the bottle of vodka is not my drinking problem. My drinking problem is my drinking problem. But like if that's the case, or you know, at that time. But like the fear was that if she saw it, then she would have the fear that this is the thing again. And like it's fears stacked on top of fears, which is what right. we start doing these things, and we do them a lot in our really close interpersonal relationships, which is bizarre, because we usually get into these really close interpersonal relationships based on being vulnerable with the person and trusting them with details and letting them in. But then we begin to cherish them so much, and they become such a part of our lives, that then we start to get afraid. Well, I don't want to lose them. So maybe there's a limit to what they can hear.
Right.
So well, then we start like omitting things.
And in our situation, by going to counseling and starting to be honest, it also revealed the reasons why seeing a bottle of vodka was a problem for her.
Of course.
Like so then things came up from her past where now all of a sudden we're starting to understand each other. So yeah, if she came home and saw a bottle of vodka, and vodka, like I don't drink vodka. Like it actually was wine. Like, and to this day it's been difficult to get to where if I have a bottle of wine and I start drinking it without her, if she sees an open bottle of wine, she still in her head thinks, what am I walking into?
Mm-hmm.
And some of that is not all of that is me. Like that's what being honest in a counseling situation helped us with, was that a lot of that was things that she had to talk about, or she had dealt with in her past, that now was coming into this situation. And so seeing a bottle of wine for her open when she comes home is different. Like I needed to understand that as well. But that's also that without being like hiding it. So we have to get to this.
Right. And not hiding it almost seems like the protection part of it, though. Like you're not necessarily trying to lie as much as you're trying to protect her from this thought that isn't true. So her perception is that you're an alcoholic because you opened a bottle of wine, and so your instinct, if I'm reading this right, or I would be to protect her from that information and say like, well,
Right.
she doesn't know, then she's not going to be upset with me. And I know I'm not an alcoholic. So do I actually need to tell her?
Yeah, so you can see how this leads to something, but I was still dishonest, and it's become work on both of our parts. So that's another thing about good counseling, is that the two people have to be working together.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about fixing the other person. It's also about figuring out what you need to be able to accept in the other person, as well.
I definitely I love this. I love like this story because I think that this story is also like it's kind of an allegory, because like this is a thing that people I think can relate to, because it's very real world details, and they think about, well, that was lies of omission or whatever. But like I also think that we, all of us, do a shit ton of lying of omission every single day, and it's just piles and piles of it, and I think it's nefarious because it creeps into this area where we have this perceived vulnerability. And what I'm talking about is direct messages. We'll share things privately with people who are like, oh, I'll DM you about that. And then you'll have this private conversation where like you explain other things because you're afraid that like the thing that you might say publicly, or the thing that you want to say about your feelings or thoughts or details, or the thing that's about who you really are inside, is not going to be generally acceptable. So like you have all of these different like micro compartments. I'm going to use your word. If you compartmentalize, you would have different.
Am I missing something?
It's not a bit, Jordan. This has never been talked about. This is just Ty and I being weird. Don't think you're left out of this. We're not lying through omission. This is like, just us playing a game in the moment.
But like the thing about it is that we do these things where we have like these direct messages with people where we will share details that they can handle, that we're not afraid of their reception on. But we pigeonhole different people differently. So like, you know, I can direct message this person because they will accept this detail about me. And I can direct message this other person because they'll accept this detail about me. But we're all pretty afraid if someone got access to all of our direct messages.
I've actually thought about that at some point. I mean, I let it go. But like there was a point where I was like, if everything I said in direct message was on like a Jumbotron, would I be okay with it? And it was kind of an interesting sort of like inner monologue where I was like, the reason I'm in direct messaging is so that everybody doesn't see what I have to say. So it's like, you still have to be held accountable for your actions, even though no one can see it. And that's a character thing. That's the thing that you have to look inside.
So for me, like, I think about this particular detail because I'm like, oh, well, I'm saying this detail here. Like, what, like, where is it? Am I ashamed of the thing that I am saying? Or is this just me being lazy? Because I'm trying to communicate something more rapidly by being rough around the edges. And I may be combative with my sharing of honest truth and not giving somebody my best. I'm just cutting a corner because I'm just going to say, well, this person is this, instead of saying, well, I feel that this person is making me feel this way. And like, there's a lot of words and being careful with other people that you have to do to cultivate an environment where we can all be really honest with each other. But I mean, fact of the matter is it gets kind of tiring because you got to say a lot of words. And so we'll cut a corner, and I'll cut a corner with somebody and I'll just be like, they're just being fucking phony. Well, that's kind of that's not a very nice thing to say. That's not designed to make the person I'm saying that about feel good. Now, do I honestly feel that way? Yeah. If they ask me that, will I tell them? Yes, but I'm going to pick different words. Right. I'm going to say something that is easier for them to hear so that then they can come back to me and say, well, I didn't mean to make you feel that way. And I think that they're like, maybe I would like you to know more about me. And then I could be like, oh, I totally misjudged you, blah, blah, so we do these things where we're trying, like, it's not like lies of omission are sometimes they're things that are based on shame. Sometimes they're just, we're afraid that the other person can't handle it. But other times it's just fucking laziness.
What about when you've told a lie to yourself so long that you believe it?
Ooh, like I'm funny?
Funny people don't say that.
Exactly.
But yeah, like what if you've convinced yourself, you've said it so many times that you think the sky is green, and you validated that in your head, and it's still lying. I see Jordan just like waiting.
No,
Like
I just want to say that that's the George Costanza way to beat the truth detector, right? The lie detector.
Yeah, is to believe it.
If it's not a lie.
Or better yet, the lie.
If you believe it.
Or better yet, the lie that I believe, because I tell it to myself a lot, is like, well, I'm a piece of shit, right?
Right.
Like, do you tell yourself that a lot? Is that something you like wake up
all the time? Like I'm like, God, I'm such a piece of shit. I'm dropping the ball all the time. Like,
where did that come from? Whose voice is that?
Whose voice is that? It's my goddamn voice, but it was built in my youth, and it's so repetitive that like I believe a good chunk of it, but it's also and it's hard to step away from it because I know that's a lie, but I don't know how much of it's a lie, because there are times I'm an actual fucking piece of shit. Right. Yeah, but like, and that's me being lazy with myself. I could say that in a whole lot better way, but I'm just gonna cut to the chase. But I'm not a piece of shit all the time. Right. But I mean, there are times like recently, like I've like been avoiding interacting with some people in details because like there was an outpouring of like help, and God, I feel ashamed that I had to ask for the help in the first place. And
are you still avoiding TikTok?
Yeah. And like this idea of like the other night, I'm in a late night chat. Let's say that Alex was there. And there was this moment where I had to admit that there were people who actually valued me. And I had to turn off my camera because I couldn't see my own face and say those words. Because when I look in the mirror, it's a negative dialogue. And like for me to be able to start the path of saying like, oh no, like there's people who love me because I actually have redeemable qualities. Like I've helped people out with the things that I have said.
Ty, do you feel like that do you feel like you've come to a place where you almost draw strength from that? Like, has it become this thing where like you get so negative on yourself that it, like now this is what you use for like motivation or something?
No, what it is actually is like beside like I mean like there's a label for it. It's called depression, but there's another label for it, and it's masking. But I'm doing it to myself. So if I can tell myself that I am a piece of shit and that I don't have value to other people, then I can't be in a position to let them down. And like letting people down, like I'm afraid of it and it hurts. And I don't want to let people down, like especially the people that I really care for. And to feel like I wasn't there for them in the moment that they needed me or something like that. It's easier for me to just tell myself I'm a piece of shit all the time and that I don't have any value at all than to say I have value. Mm-hmm. But sometimes I fucking drop the ball. Right. So like, and it's this weird, messed up aspect, and it's a callback to like when we talked about the rejection episode, like the rejection sensitivity dysphoria, like the aspect of like you go two different directions, and sometimes you go down both with different people, or in different instances where like you're gonna be a pleaser, but then other times you're just gonna be like, I don't care. Well, a lot of the times I just go down the path of like, well, I don't really have any fucking value anyways, so I don't care. I'm
Well,
still
and,
gonna try my
and I
best
think
because I want to, but like,
I think the very same. There's also the exact opposite. That is the exact same thing, on the opposite direction, which is people that think that choose to keep telling themselves that they are the greatest thing in the world, you know, and
yeah.
and it comes from the exact same place, and the and it goes back to how we started this conversation, where it's like there, but what is reality? Like, so you can honestly think that you are a piece of shit, or you can honestly try to think that you are the greatest, and you might even believe it. Like, I mean,
But it's not true. It doesn't mean it's truthful.
Well, so is that the bit that we're getting to? Is that where you can look yourself in the mirror, and I can say, like, if I look myself in the mirror, I can go, geez, you got pretty blue eyes, and you've got this little spot right here where that's
I think
that's a blemish, but you just put cover up on it because you're really insecure about it. So like you're a man who's using cover up on like a digital platform. Is that something like?
Yeah, I think it's the inverse
need
of
to be honest
Instagram.
about that, right? Like
I think
I can look at the good things and see the pimples at the same time.
Yeah, honesty is removing the mask. Honesty is not having those filters that make you feel like you are something that you're not, because that's what you want people to perceive you as instead of who you actually are.
right.
So is makeup a lie?
It is a crutch. I don't know that it's a lie.
Or is it just something that enables you to be your best so that you can go out and fucking attack the world? Because I think maybe it's both.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think whatever, if there's something that makes you feel better, I mean, you know, there's a very like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, it kind of depends. Are you doing it for you, or are you doing it for someone else? Like, and let's forget makeup, because that has too many connotations on it. But like, let's just say like making yourself look good in the morning, like doing your hair, taking a shower, shaving, like I haven't done in like. There is something about stepping out of a shower fresh and clean, combing up, dressing up, whatever it is, makeup, whatever it is. There is something about that does feel good to you.
Yeah.
And if that feeling is because you think that you have to do it for someone else, that's different than you just being comfortable with you and being like, okay, I'm going to put on makeup because I want to, like, because it's not for anyone. It's for me because it just makes me feel good. I like how it looks. I like how it feels, whatever it is. You know, there's a phrase that someone shared with me the other day. It's from a rapper Lecrae. It says if you live for people's acceptance, you'll die from their rejection. And that's a piece of it. If you're putting on makeup to be accepted by other people, then you're going to die when it doesn't work, because someone's not going to like your makeup, no matter how great you feel in it.
I will
Sorry,
say
I just had a little sriracha on that.
I love the
apologize.
sriracha. I like the sriracha though. Like, I'm good with the sriracha, but like, I mean, that's probably because like, I mean, I think Alex, I'm going to speak for Alex, whether he wants me to or not, but like, I think it's because we have some sriracha ourselves. You know,
definitely.
Like it's definitely, it's baked in who we are. But like, I will say this about makeup. Like, I never really like used cover up before TikTok, but like I would realize that like I would have an ingrown hair, and like every time I like tried to video myself for like a TikTok, I'd be like, oh, I can't bear the sight of that thing, and it would take me out of my mind, and I couldn't be creative and fun and silly in the moment. And I was like, oh, I'm just gonna put some cover up on this. No one will have to know. And then I can just be what I want to be. So now all I realize is just like, oh yeah, I have this one spot on my face where I always get this ingrown hair, and it always hurts, and it's always like a throbbing like pimple that I'm really fucking like
Yeah.
super insecure about, but like I can just put a dab of this like
But
like seriously, there's not a cover up that is fair enough for my complexion apparently though. It's like I need to
But
go outside and get some sun at
everyone
some
has
point.
pimples though. Everyone has pimples. So you
I know,
trying to
but,
cover up and hide this thing that is part of being human is you being it's being insecure about your own honesty. I mean,
But
that's
it's true, but like, you know, I wouldn't have been able to like I would have been sitting there not giving my best because I would have been constantly like focusing while looking at the screen.
sure. So it made you feel better. That's what Jordan was saying, is that
The only thing I'm seeing is this one blemish. No one else
it,
really cares about
it wasn't a lie, it was a motivation tactic. And for me, the doubt is my motivation. So when Jordan, you said you use negativity as your catalyst, I absolutely do that in my real life. That's what I take negativity and do, is I feed it through myself and I say, like, how can I make this the positive? How can I show that this is true? This is my truth, even though you've doubted me. On that note, you guys have anything else to say?
I mean, I always have a bunch else to say, but we don't have enough time for it now.
Did we get to the bit? Do we know what the bit is?
The bit is honesty is makeup, but also not. I don't know.
Jordan?
What was the bit that we said like 30 minutes in? What was that?
I don't know. We'll have to watch it on the replay.
Great.
Like that.
All right. We'll see everyone next week. Good show.
All right. Love you. Bye.